Good afternoon. Hi there. How are you? My name is Pat Campbell, radio talk show host from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and you are watching The Rational Male 101, episode 30, Father's Day. Why all the hate? And of course, I'm joined by the godfather of the manosphere himself, the cult leader, Rollo Tomassi,
yes.
The Rational Male. Rollo, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, welcome to my cult.
Welcome to the cult. Father's Day.
Father's Day. Yeah, I mean, this is always, I've written probably 3 different essays, and I've put at least one of those in the 3rd book. So Father's Day always rolls around, and it seems like it's always like a reminder, I think, of where we are as far as like the gender divide is concerned, right. Because as you know, because you and I did this last year as well, we had people, sort of compare and contrast between Mother's Day and Father's Day. And if you don't know, it kind of sneaks up on you. And so you're not really thinking, okay, well, what happened? And, we do it from a church point of view, but like you can do that, just in society and everything, and just sort of compare and contrast. And so I like doing these shows because it sort of gives us a chance to talk about that compare and contrast.
This year, the pounding is particularly hard. I was just telling Rollo off air. He said, "What are you doing to celebrate Father's Day?" And today we're not doing anything in my house for a number of reasons. Tomorrow, probably going to do something for my father-in-law. I don't know if I'm even going to be around. As many of you know, my father just passed away. I'm not really in the mood for it this year. In fact, we talked about church before, how on Mother's Day, and I'm Catholic, on Mother's Day, we get the mothers to stand up, and we practically put them on a pedestal, and we tell them how wonderful they are, and we all get down on our knees and thank them for everything they've done for us. You compare and contrast that with Father's Day a couple of weeks later, it's a whole different story. You're never told how great you are, how wonderful you are. It's like you need to step up your game. It's just not enough. In fact, I'm in such a pissy mode. I don't often do this, but I left after communion today. I didn't even stick around for the talk for fear I might snap on Padre.
Oh, geez.
So
you're in rare form today. That's good.
Yes, I'm my best self. I'm my best self today. So we started looking at some of this crap that was circulating, on social media a couple days leading up to this, and there was one you caught about this guy who built a shelf, super shelf for this woman that he married. This is like her 2nd or 3rd husband. I don't know, but not the original husband. Yeah. And she collects mugs. By the way, as a screening tool when you're dating somebody, find out if their mother collects things, because hold on, I'm telling you right now, collection is the first step towards hoarding. Collection can become ridiculously ugly at some point. Yeah. But chicks that are into collecting things, that's a sign of some deeper things going on. So this lady's into collecting mugs. Let me read the tweet from the daughter here. It says,
I'm going to put it up here. Go ahead.
Yeah, it says, "My dad used to get so mad every time my mom would come home with a new coffee mug. She likes to collect them. And her new boyfriend literally built her a wall to display her collection. This is why we don't settle for loser boys, ladies. I mean, God, the venom is just dripping from this chick." But what really blew me away was the responses. And there's over 5,000 responses that are, for the most part, I'd say 90% negative. It's just other chicks jumping on board, telling what a piece of crap their biological father was. Right. I've never seen anything like it. And I'm looking at this picture. Do you have the picture up on the screen there?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, so look at the chick here. This is quite the catch. I don't know where you'd put her on your scale of 1 to 10, but she's middle-aged woman, nothing spectacular. And this guy is pandering to her. He's probably desperate for any sort of attention. And with any luck, if he plays his card right, maybe every other Saturday he'll get about 5 minutes of starfish action. That's about as good as it's going to get for him. But he's one of these guys that he needs to be praised by women. He needs to be told how wonderful he is, because obviously, I mean, just look at the get up there. He hasn't been getting a lot of action up till now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'll stop this here real quick and come back. All right, there we go. No, I thought that this was the interesting one, because it seems like whenever we get to Father's Day, and particularly now, because like, as people know, my theme for this year and really into next year has been hashtag gender war, right? And just how we're in sort of this gender cold war. And it seems like every month there's some new example of that. Like January was the Gillette commercial. February we had Super Bowl stuff, and and so on and so on and so on. And I think that when we get to, I wish I would have kept a little bit more of the Mother's Day stuff to, like I said, compare and contrast. But in this month, of course, we have Father's Day, and every Father's Day, really, since the sexual revolution, has been a chance, or it's the opportunity to directly have a society or a societal message. And it's not about appreciating the fathers. It's you need to do better. You need to qualify. You need to man up. You need to X, Y, and Z. And I think that we're at a stage, and I think it's particularly highlighted this year because of what we're moving into right now, which I really feel is this feminine primary push, so that the future is like, for instance, the future is female. It's her turn. When we get into the election cycle proper, which we really are kind of right now, every opportunity will be made to emphasize this gender divide. And so when Father's Day rolls around, that's an opportunity to focus on it that much more, and say, here's what men are doing. Or if there was a new study, or for whatever reason, they'll focus on that. But this is in June, Father's Day is the gimme, right? It's the one where we can. And so I think that this tweet going viral, and there's a few other ones we're going to talk about as well, but it's going viral because that's the direction that's the conversation people want to have, and they were waiting for an opportunity just like this, so that they could do their own, pontificating about how men need to step up. And this was part of that. So you've got a guy who's building this thing for his girlfriend, and what's interesting to me is there's so much going on in this one, because I believe the tweet was tweeted by some woman who I guess is the daughter of who hates dad.
Right.
So you want to talk about, we can get into daddy issues a little bit later here. There's a daddy issue right there waiting to happen.
Oh, yeah.
If it hasn't already happened. And so the ideal father is not her biological father. It's not the guy who probably didn't want to put up with whatever it was he was putting up with. You have to understand that there's like so much like content here. There's so much statistical stuff here. Is like, when you look at how 70% of women divorce men, they're removed from the household. We got into this a little bit on Friday, and of course, when I start making a case for how men are kind of demonized during this particular period, of course, the first thing out of women's mouth is that, oh, well, I appreciate my husband, or I really appreciate my father. I really appreciate, I think this is too bad. It's what your producer said, which is, well, some of those men deserve to be removed. Some of those men are rat bastards, right? So, or they're deadbeat dads. Whenever you read an article about single parent families, it is always, you can tell by the tone of the article, by when they say it's a fatherless home or it's a single parent family. And in every instance where it's the fatherless home, that is what's called neurolinguistic programming. And it's this idea that if you use the right words, it will embed this subconscious understanding that something is good or something is bad, or you're trying to lead somebody in a particular direction. And that's exactly what's going on with a lot of these articles. Like when I did a lot of kind of studying up for this particular episode between the two of us. I think this is probably the most information I think I've tweeted to you before a show in a while. But there's, like I said, there's just so much at play in all of this. But I think that this particular tweet shines because it gave the opportunity for people to get together and just sort of have their bitch fest about their dad. And you want to, do you want to read some of those? Or
I do. But here's the other thing. And I told you, when I worked in Orlando, I worked for Clear Channel, and we had a 7-station cluster, the Monsters in the morning.
Yep.
They had strippers in there like every day, right? Mm-hmm. Every one of those chicks was a train wreck, guaranteed. And it was always tied in with, dad, either an abusive dad or an absentee dad or a series of uncles that had come through the house and molested them. And, that led to their drug problems, all these other things. This, I would think if I was blindfolded and had to read these, I would think these are strippers talking, but they're not. They're not. You would believe that like 95% of all men are this way. Listen to this one. This was the I'll be kind. The heavyset girl, the heavyset woman. So this is her daughter talking. My dad was an addict and emotionally abusive and would call my mom fat and make fun of her for trying to lose weight. Well, now my stepdad brought her or bought them paddle boards so they can go together, paid for a personal trainer, and goes on hikes with her daily because he knew it was important to her. So because one guy was a dick to your mom, all the rest of us are bad. That's basically what it is. That's basically what it is.
Right. And that's the I mean, that's always going to be the narrative too. It's there's kind of a difference between guys who have a problem with their dad or their absentee father or whatever and women. Okay. Because when women have a problem with their dad, it's that guy represents the masculine ideal. Of course it does for the men as well. But what happens is the women are trying to figure out what the kind of guy is that they should be with if their dad isn't the best example of, or at least in their minds isn't the best example of masculine or conventional masculinity for them. On the opposite side is you have the guys who were raised by single mothers who are probably also getting this negative information, this negative stereotype of what men are, and never had probably any masculine influence, but certainly not a positive, conventionally masculine one as well. And so for men, for young men and for young women, it's a different thing because women are looking for the guy with whom they are going to pair off with, and that is the primary impetus of their their impression, I guess, of the man. Whereas for men, it's like, I don't want to be like that. I want to make sure that I'm not the kind of guy. And
so I'm going to overcompensate. I'm going to be super dead.
Yes. Or what I call this is promise keepers. These are the promise keeping men who have been brought up by single mothers who, for whatever reason, believe that their father was just a flaming asshole, and maybe he was. Okay, I'm not saying that the possibility doesn't exist, but more than likely, if you, as we know, women mothers get primary custody 85 on 90% of the time. So that is a constant. She is a constant in his life. And the father even the best of fathers is going to be less constant than the woman is going, or the mother is going to be in that child's life. And so if he is getting this constant negative barrage of, your dad was an asshole, your dad didn't send the check this month, your dad went and brought home prostitutes or whatever, bad mouthing the dad, then also compound that with the message that he's probably getting in school, the message he's probably getting in popular media, the message he's getting from his friends. And you see this reinforcement through tweets, through media, through things like this. And so what that guy does is he decides, I never want to be like my dad. I am going to be the best provider. I'm going to take care of mom. I'm going to step up and be the man that my dad never was. And that's why I call it a promise keeper. So these guys promise themselves that they'll never be like their old man. And then when they get into an adult life, they start encountering all of the problems and all of the conflicts that their dad also encountered with mom, with their girlfriends. And so when they feel conflicted like that, the reason I wrote that post, it's called Promise Keepers. The reason I wrote that is because I had so many guys saying, I don't want to be anything like my old man, but I just cheated on my girlfriend. And
they guilt themselves.
They guilt themselves. Yeah, exactly. Because they broke a promise that when they were like teenagers, like they said, at 15 years old, I'm going to promise that I'm never going to be like my old man. And then they find that once they become an adult and they get into adult relationships, hopefully they've, progressed into, adult social skill sets. They find that they're dealing with the same kind of stuff that their dad did back in the day. And so now they're conflicted by that because that has been their impression of conventional masculinity. Whereas for women, with daddy issues, as we like to say, there is either this need for security and a controlling nature to them. Like they have to be in control. They want a man to do what they want that guy to do because they have had that pounded into their heads that men are unreliable, men are bastards. They're never there for you. So what's the response to that? I have to do everything. I have to be the source of my own security. I have to be the one. I have to be the man of the house is basically what they're saying to themselves. And so a man to them is just a convenient, sexual opportunity, and that's it. And that's why you see women, we always say, well, strippers have daddy issues, or porn stars have daddy issues. Yeah, okay, I could certainly see that, but let's dig a little bit deeper in there and say, what is it about those daddy issues that made them who they are?
Let me give you a quick example. I think I've told you this story before. I've told it on my radio show, local radio show, and I've told it at speaking engagements. And it's always interesting to see the reaction of the men in the audience versus the women in the audience. So anyways, to make a long story short, I got a lady listener, about 40-ish, okay? Mm-hmm. She went through a radical body transformation through diet and exercise. She probably lost 50, maybe 60 pounds. And she got herself looking really good, okay? She's got 4 teenage daughters, and dad's a dick. I'm just going to tell you straight up, dad's a dick, okay? Mm-hmm. So one night at dinner time, one of the daughters was fishing for a compliment, anything for mom. And she mentioned that, mom had lost weight. Doesn't she look really good, okay? And the guy could have done any number of things. He could have said nothing. He could have just simply nodded his head in approval. Said something, supportive, but no, instead he goes, but her breasts are smaller. So all of a sudden, all the air in the room just gets sucked out. Mm-hmm. You've got the mother who did all this work. She's not getting any sort of, praise, any sort of encouragement. 4 daughters who are being told by their dad that a woman's worth or value is tied into their breast size. The guy just completely sucked all the air out of the room. And he had his own set of problems. He's an alcoholic. He's not doing the job he wants to do. He's frustrated. So what does he do? He lashes out at everybody out there. Okay. Guys like that exist. But I'm here to tell you today, those guys are in the minority. Right. And if you read social media today, you would think every guy is like that. They're not. Right. Every guy is not like that. Here's the other date. When a girl grows up in an environment like that, you would think that intuitively, man, once I get out of the house, I'm going to get somebody that's the opposite of that. But here's one of the weird things. A lot of times they get drawn to somebody who's just as abusive, maybe not in the same way, because it's what they know. It's the comfort zone. Mm-hmm. But guys like that beat people down, they're dicks. Mm-hmm. But I'm here to tell you, they're the minority and not the majority. And if you turn on a TV today or look at any social media, you think every guy is like that.
Right. And I'll tell you why that is. Okay. Because first of all, we as we talk about quite a bit is we are living in a gynocentric social order. That's also applied to our media, to our popular culture, everything else. So when you look at things from, like, we often talk about how we see society through a red pill lens. Well, what I'm asking guys to do right now is sort of see through the feminine primary lens for a moment here. Okay. Because what happens is, and this happened 2 weeks ago on your show, and we had that one caller who called in, and she was berating me for creating all the narcissistic guys in the world.
Quite a responsibility.
Yeah, exactly. You cult leader Rollo Tomasi is responsible for all the narcissists in the world, the narcissistic men in the world. But I want to use her as an example for how women go about taking their own anecdotes, taking their own personal experiences and extrapolating them to being the universal cosmic truth for everybody. So if it happened to her in that immediate, remember, women process information, instinct, emotion, and then we reason. So when she's processing this all through her emotion, if she even ever gets to the rationalization part or the reasoning part, we're expected to feel that along with her. That's when we look at our social order as being a feminine primary social order. It's also one of emotion, where we as men are expected to feel exactly what she's feeling, and then to presume that because she felt it, that is the universal truth for the whole thing. The same thing when I was talking with your producer yesterday, or no, Friday. About like when she came in. Of course, this is what women's first natural reflex when someone like me says, okay, here's what I'm seeing going on. We're berating men, or if I'm trying to make the case for men, the first natural reflexive impulse is, well, men do it too. Or if I say something unflattering about the feminine in a general sense, or, well, you're just generalizing. Well, the reason that that's offensive to them is because women individualize, and they make the anecdote, they make the personal experience the universal experience. So because this woman who I was, on the phone, or you was on the phone for that one show, because she had experienced something bad with a narcissistic guy, all guys are narcissistic. And that you can see that if you look at the responses to that tweet for the guy who's building the coffee.
Right.
It's not, see, here's the thing. People want to focus on the minutia. They want to focus on, oh, well, here he's just useful, or he's just a plow horse, or he's just what I always say is women see men as either draft animals or breeding stock. In this case, that guy would be a draft animal because he's doing what he should. He's doing what he's told. If you're following along with the feminine imperative, right, then you deserve the manhood badge. You get here's your man card because you built a case for some coffee cups collection. Okay, something as simple and stupid as that, right? Well,
but to them it matters because he cares. He cared enough to do that.
Right. Well, what happens is, like, this is an opportunity, like I said, for women to relate their unique their unique experience in life and their estimation of men to be the universal understanding of that. So, like, when your producer said, well, what about guys? Guys are often deadbeats, and maybe they got divorced for this. It's like, okay, I'm not talking about guys, first of all, the opposite side. We're focusing on this one side, but then I'm dragged over into having to say, well, okay, one is not the other, but then that gets into like egalitarian equalism and all that, and blank slate stuff.
The lady that called you about the narcissism with her ex, if you can, I can sense the degree of hurt in somebody's voice. Her I don't know her personally, but her hurt it's too recent. She hasn't gone through the stages of grief with this. She's still coping with this, and when she hears you going off, she instantly, even though you're not, thinks you're talking about her case. It's the thing I've told you. It's the thing that's bugged me the most about talk radio. I can control what I say and how I say it, but I cannot control what people hear, or, like you're experiencing, think they hear you say. I didn't hear you say that. Right. Most guys listening to the program didn't hear you say that. Right. She heard you say that. She
did. And most women would, because, as I've said, I've written about this for next to hypergamy. The next most common thing that I have talked about in my work has been female solipsism. And this is a prime example of that. So when you look at women's innate nature for solipsism, and this is an evolved thing, okay? This is something.
Explain what that is for people who are
solipsism. Solipsism is actually a philosophical thing. I'm using that term. We've been talking about this in the Red Pill for quite some time. I mean, as far back as like the early 2000s, about how women have an innate sense of solipsism, meaning that the world goes on around them, and they're the primary center of that world.
They're the center of the universe.
Okay,
the world.
There's a difference between solipsism and narcissism. Okay,
right.
Women are always going to believe that the things that are going on around them are only there to serve their needs, and they have to, because that's a survival trait. That's a survival. I don't want to say an adaptation, but it's a survival trait for women, because it has to be. They have to be that concerned with their own survival. They have to be that concerned with the survival of their own offspring as well. Right. So in past, that's been a good thing. Now, people think that conflicts with my idea about how women in groups tend to be more collective. Yes, but they're collective in the sense that they're focused on themselves. They're focused on primarily their own security. That's why, safety is strength in numbers kind of thing. So when I talk about solipsism, in this sense, it is anything that happens to them personally is the universal constant, because they're the universe, right? They're the most important thing in their lives. And it's not narcissism where I'm not saying women can't be narcissistic, but this is a different thing from like this overly, destructive self-love that is narcissism. Solipsism is just it's a mental point of origin. Like when I tell guys, you need to be the first thought that comes into your head. You don't have to tell women that, because they already are the first thought that comes into their head, because they society reinforces that, but that's what they're always taught, is that they have to. because it's a survival trait.
Here's where you're getting pushback from female listeners, especially on the local radio program. Okay, when they hear you, because I've talked to women after you've been on the show.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it seems like you, and I think what really triggered the one lady is that, well, you had to have played some role in this. You're not, everything's 100% being put on the guy, right? And you're not accepting any responsibility. Let me give you a perfect case. We had a state senator here, Ralph Shorty, who maybe about 2 years ago, he was married. He had a wife, 4 beautiful little kids. He was a big leader in the Baptist church in his community. And he gets caught in a hotel room with a 17-year-old male having sex and smoking weed, okay? His wife didn't have a clue. Her whole world comes crashing down, okay? Now she is in a position where she's got to do it all. She's got to be the mom. She's got to be the dad. She's got to be responsible for providing for the family because her husband's in jail for the next 15 years and they're not getting back together. So there are people out there who have been betrayed at such a level that it really isn't their fault that they got in a situation like that. He had everybody snookered. No, but in fact, when the story broke, it was like, no way. Yeah, you couldn't believe it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's those kind of situations are out there. That's why in certain cases, and I don't know that other lady's case that called in about the narcissism, but for guys like us, we go, well, you had to have, didn't you know at some point? Did you play a role, any role whatsoever? And in some cases, they don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the thing is because we live in a feminine primary social order, we presume. Remember, it's believe all women. This is an extension of believe all women. So whatever that woman was feeling at the time, whatever she's feeling at the time that I'm talking to her, that's the only thing that's real. That's the only thing that's real for her. And because we are brought up to believe in an inherent default female correctness, that whatever she's feeling must be true. So we don't even ask those questions. Those don't even pop up. If you got, I can, God, I wouldn't want to do this, but I could point to all kinds of instances, like say on a show like The View or something, where I can go, well, but wait, what about this? What about that side? What about this thing? Right? Those questions don't even get asked because it's all focused on that personal experience. That's why shows like that are so pervasive with women, because it plays on the emotions, but it also plays on their individual experience as being the universal experience. And so it's very affirming for them to do that. And that's really, and I don't want to get too far off topic here, but that's really one of the things that like this tweet was talking about is when, well, I should say the responses to this tweet we're talking about is each one of these women, and not too many men who are there white knighting and trying to, be one of the girls kind of thing. It's reaffirming of that. Well, first of all, the victimhood, but it's reaffirming of their personal experience that they believe is the universal experience. And so going in there and even just asking the question, well, what about the guy? Why did your dad leave? Or what's the story between the two of them? We don't even ask those questions. But if I were to go into that conversation, into the thousands of other tweets and say something like that, I would be dogpiled, because I'd be taking the side of the other guy. And that would be denying their feel good. It would be denying them that dopamine hit that they get whenever they feel that kind of affirmation. So that's kind of like the deeper, I think, psychological side of how we berate men just in general, but certainly on Father's Day, is we like to pile on. Men should be able to just, because if you complain, if you even say anything, if you even have a counter argument to any of this, it's who hurt you, or it's what's happening is and it's like everybody becomes an armchair psychologist. So you're projecting, you're doing this, you're doing that, and so you don't have that discussion. You can't even have the debate at all, because the female side of interpreting that in an emotional sense is you're taking that away from them by injecting some sort of rationality to it, or even just a counterbalance to it. And there's really no will to understand it. I was looking at this other this other thing. I want to say it was in the Washington Post or Washington Examiner. And it's the future of men and marriage is bleak. Of course, this comes out on Sunday, Father's Day as well. But what I thought was really interesting is I'm just going to pull a quick quote from this thing. It's I'll put the link in the chat here.
Are you putting it on
says,
the screen?
Yeah, I can. It says the only thing I wanted to pull out of this was, it says that the two most significant threats to a father's presence in the home are divorce and out of wedlock births. So when it's not like there is this pandemic of guys just knocking up women and running out the door and running away from it. The most pervasive, or the biggest reason is men are pulled and removed from the home because of divorce. They're removed from the, and the other one is, of course, out of wedlock births. 43% of births are born out of wedlock. So there's a father and a mother for that, but we're only looking, who's got primary custody of it. Right. 90% of the time it's going to be the mother. Divorce, 70% is being initiated by women. Men are being removed from the equation right now. I was listening to Tim Pool talking about this on my drive in here today, and he was talking about another article that was on Quillette about exactly what we're talking about today. And it was running down the list of reasons why men and women aren't getting married, why men and women, like, there's a lower incidence of divorce right now, but you can sort of link that back to the fact that people just simply aren't getting married right now. And so when we look at fathers, and we looked at this epidemic of they want to say fatherless homes, we have to look at things from both sides here. Men are being removed from the household. When you look at the Duluth model of feminism, men are always the perpetrators of aggression, of violence, of whatever else. That's the presumption. So when there is a domestic dispute, it's the man who's always removed from that. We have a divorce industry that is built around the idea that the man is going to be leaving and paying child support. The man is going to be removed from the situation, and he's going to the money is going to be in that divorce and in that separation. So it's either going to be alimony or whatever.
By the way, we've got a company that advertises on my local show, Cordell and Cordell. They're nationwide. Mm-hmm. They put out a book. I had the guy on a couple years ago. The top 10 things for guys to do when they're considering divorce. Number one is never, ever, ever, ever get out of the house. Because once you're gone, you're never going to get that back.
You can't come back. Yeah.
You stay. If somebody's going to leave, she leaves. Mm-hmm. Kids leave. You stay. You hold on to the fort.
Right. And all that has to happen to you is a woman has to file some sort of injunction, and if she believes you're a danger, they automatically take her side of the story because she's going to be the primary caregiver. I feel like me and my children are endangered because of this man. So,
right. And there doesn't even have to be a physical, there doesn't have to be physical danger. I mean, just, just an implied feeling of a threat of danger is sometimes enough.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. It's so lopsided though. At any time, for any reason, okay, if you're married, your wife can turn your life upside down, and you're going to lose 50% of what you got, probably lose custody of kids too. There is no such reversal for guys. There's no legal tool for you to use or me to use to flip it on your wife, especially with no fault divorce.
Yeah,
it doesn't. There's no way that if she doesn't give me what I want, whatever that is, and I don't like that, I can't go to an attorney and all of a sudden 50% of everything she's ever earned, ever done is gone like that.
And into the future too.
Yep, and into the future.
And into the future as well. So I know this is kind of course, we talk about the depressing stuff here. I think that this is a conversation that needs to happen, because we have to understand why we're seeing 43% of births being out of wedlock. We have to understand why abortion has skyrocketed since the sexual revolution. Why divorce rates
First of all, there's no stigma. Right, there's no stigma associated with it.
Yeah, there's no stigma with it. But there is a stigma for a guy being a deadbeat dad. There is still that stigma, but there is no stigma for a woman to be a single mother anymore, or to even electively become a single mother anymore. So when we look at those things, it's like, why is there a counterbalance to this right now? And of course, I've always, in my third book, I've always said that it's because we've switched over to a feminine primary social order right now. Women are always correct. So when we look at the old social contract, when we look at the old way that we used to do things prior to the
Right.
sexual revolution, we can say, and I think we can honestly still say this now, is that the nuclear family, the at least socially enforced monogamous family, has been the foundation of Western society for a very long time now. At least in post-agrarian times, it has been, mom, dad, the kids, and
Right.
the dog, and we're going to work the farm, or we're going to do whatever we're going to do. But we had that nuclear family right up until we came up with hormonal birth control and unilaterally put the reproductive process of humanity in the hands of women. And so that's where we're at right now. And so what happened is the child raising model that used to be the standard, which was a married couple raising children, with a dominant masculine man and a submissive wife. And I don't mean submissive in like she's a slave. I'm just saying there's a dominant and a sub in every relationship. That was the core of what we had prior to all this. So we had this marriage-based way of raising kids. Now we have shifted in the post-sexual revolution era. We've shifted to a child support based model of raising children. So it's not who's going to be the father of this kid, it's who's going to pay for this kid. That's where it comes down to, is who's going to support this kid. It's not about dad being dad, because right now, if you look at this, we still like to say that it's so important for men to be a part of their kids' lives. Great, I understand that. Well, then stop treating men as if they're superfluous, and stop treating women, or stop reinforcing this idea that women can do it all, that women can be the masculine equivalent and the feminine equivalent to any kid. And that's where there's more to being a father than just sending a paycheck to your ex-wife or to the mother, to your baby mama. And
real quick here. The other thing you wanted me to bring up, there was another hashtag today, and on Father's Day, it just went sideways.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
called hashtag when dad went out for cigarettes. Let me just share one. This lady says he must have gotten lost because he ended up in the Philippines, where he bought a store, a boat, and a new daughter. Oops, I mean a new wife. And this is a rather innocent little hashtag, and it turns into bash the crap out of men.
Right. And I mean, if you go and you look at that, I saw some other ones where like people were saying this is kind of screwed up, my dad was just fine, whatever. But those are like in the vast minority. And again, goes back to what we were saying before, is that women and feminized men want an opportunity to complain about their fathers. And by doing so, and by extension, they are complaining about masculinity. Most men don't understand masculinity because they're taught not to. They're taught to what I call gender loathe. They're taught to loathe being a masculine. They find everything that's wrong with being a man. And then you say, okay, well, what is masculinity? Either they will say, I define masculinity for myself, or they'll go, I don't know, because I've never been, they only have these really gross stereotypes of masculinity that are presented for them. So the guy who is like uber masculine is this macho jerk who probably gave them wedgies in high school. The jock guy who's this abusive guy that they don't want to be like. So they've got that, or they've got the abusive father. I mean, think about all the archetypes here. You've got the jock, you've got the abusive father, you've got the absentee father, you've got the ridiculous Dr. Huxtable father, who's basically portrayed as a child himself, who needs to be saved from himself because of Mrs. Huxtable kind of thing. So you've got those, and you don't have, and that's why I wrote Positive Masculinity, because you have all of those archetypes and you'd have nothing that is positive. You have nothing. And the only positivity, the only time a man is lifted up for being a man is when he acts like a woman, when he dances around in a tutu, because like that one video that was that went viral of that guy who was dancing with his son, and they're both dressed up like the princess from Frozen, and they're doing pirouettes and they're singing along to this thing because the kid is because the kid has decided he wants to be transgender.
Let me
then we lift that up. Then that's a good dad.
All right, let me throw something at you. Got this from a listener. He's 40-something, recently back into the dating game, okay, after a divorce. He took like 2 years off, decided he wanted to get back out there. Here's what he is encountering, and it's frustrating the living hell out of him. Just about every woman that he is dating, because of his age, has already been through a couple of relationships. In some cases, one marriage, maybe two. Okay. And what frustrates him is it doesn't matter how nice he is, how good he is, how much he does for the particular woman. He is always going to be judged through the eyes of the guys that preceded him, how they treated her. And it's the same way, and I'm tying this into Father's Day. This is, okay, so I'm looking at some of these people complain and bitch about their dads, okay? Well, that was 20, 30 years ago. So what's holding you back now, honey? I mean, it's like they get up in the morning, they put all this garbage in a wheelbarrow to haul around all day long. It's like, okay, yeah, your dad was a dick. I get it, okay? He mistreated you. So how is it that that's holding you back now? Why haven't you moved beyond that? And why can't you find somebody that's not like that?
Joe Navarro, the guy who's the body language expert, the FBI guy, he calls that wound collecting. Those are wound collectors. They hang on to things and wait for the opportunity. Like the girl that called, the lady that called in 2 weeks ago, that's a wound collector right there. That's somebody who's waiting for her opportunity to show off her collection of wounds. And they never really, and guys do this too, but primarily we see it in women. Well, first of all, because the society's focused on women, but it's also because women, we're expected to empathize with women. We're expected to feel exactly what they're feeling because they see that as the universal constant right there. So they pick up on those things and they hang on to those. Now, I was just going to say is that we only really elevate men when that guy plays the proper role, when he plays the role that feminine primary social order has set for him, like that one guy who dresses in the tutu and was dancing around with his kids, or will look like the other one is a good example, is the guy who built the coffee cup collection. Okay, it's no big deal. Great, I collect stuff. Everybody collects stuff. Okay, who cares? Is that going to be what you're going to base manhood on? Well, in this case, for the women who are responding to that tweet, yes, they are. What they do is they believe, when in a feminine primary society, women believe that they hold the man card. They have manhood and masculinity down. So a real man does X, builds a coffee a coffee hutch or whatever, builds this, does this, is in some way useful in a utilitarian way for a woman. Then you get that, all right? A real man does X, Y, and Z. And so we've raised generations of young men to either hate their own masculinity, gender loathe, to be confused by it, or to have archetypes and to believe in archetypes of masculinity that are either ridiculous or dangerous.
I got a huge problem with women defining what it is to be a real man. Imagine what their reaction would be if we came on the program. Well, this is what a real woman looks like. Right.
Oh, I've seen that. We've already done that. When you look at like AJ Cortes did this. He put out that tweet about like a feminine woman. If you want to be a feminine woman, and then he had this list like grow your hair long, be thin, be feminine, be happy, blah blah blah, and look what happened. That tweet went viral. It was on local news stations and everything else. And when you look at the response to that, in the same way that women want the affirmation to beat down men, they also like that indignation. I've said this before. Women have an evolved need for the chemical rush, the endorphins, the dopamine that they get when they feel indignation. And that was fuel for indignation. You want to make a tweet go viral, give women what they want, which is red meat, which is that they want to feel that indignation. If you can in some way stimulate that, you will get a viral tweet. Trust me. And so everyone wanted to pile on because you as a man have no right to expect anything from a woman. Whereas in the opposite side, a woman can give you a laundry list of expectations and prerequisites to either make you someone she might consider having sex with or might consider having a relationship with, or you aren't a real man unless you fit this bill. If you say so, what the message, what the overall, we're gonna see the forest for the trees here. What the overall message is that men, you have nothing. You can't ask for anything. You can't do anything. You can't have any standards. You're just a guy. You're either like I said, a draft animal or you're a breeding stock. You don't have a say. You don't have a voice. It's none of your business. But women can withhold your understanding, or we have the keys to the masculine castle. We have the manhood medal, and you don't get that unless you build a coffee collection, unless you can be serviceable in some way to a woman or to the feminine imperative at large.
Right.
And that is the message that we're getting, particularly on Father's Day right now.
So one of the things I brought up on my local program, but I definitely want to get into this with you today, is how women can be practically schizophrenic. Okay, and it was, I did a show on this before in the past locally here, but things that women will say to you, to a husband, or pretty much to a husband, I guess, or a boyfriend. Some of the meanest, most vicious, nasty things. And, they expect you to just forget about it and move on, kiss, make up, have some makeup sex, and then we just move forward. Whereas if I, as a guy, or you as a guy, were to say some of these things to women, they would be devastated. And it would be, these would be some of the wounds they would show to people 15, 20 years down the road. Case in point. So you got Father's Day, right? And everybody, you get the card, oh, you're the greatest dad in the world. Oh, you're the greatest husband. I'm so lucky I met you, yada, 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 right? Yet maybe a week or two earlier, you were being read the riot act that, you always put the family last. All you care about is yourself. It's like you're looking at these people going, is this the same person? Are you nuts? Have I lost my mind? What's going on?
Yes. And I'm gonna throw another monkey. I've been writing this down. I'm gonna throw another monkey wrench into that too. Is that emotionalism for men and for women is never going to be equal. So, like, remember we were talking about wound collecting.
Right.
For a man to be a wound collector makes him weak. It makes him look like less of a man. For a woman to do it, she's entitled to her wound collection. Because we live in feminine primary social order, because we see her, we believe all women. Believe all women is not just about Me Too. It's not just about rape. It's about everything. So when a woman says, I'm feeling this, you as a man in a gynocentric social order are expected to legitimize that, to make that, that's why we say, well, you're not really I need a man who's a good listener. No, what you want is a guy who validates your emotionalism on demand. And so if a guy were to do those things, if a guy were to be a wound collector, if a guy were to act in a female manner by, doing, we will say that's okay for a woman to do that. But if you do that, you're not a real man unless you are like, and so what I find interesting is we have this constant message from women that says, we need men to be more vulnerable. We need men to be more emotionally available. We need men to be in touch with their feminine side. We need And so what happens is when guys do that, they are berated for that, because even the women who are saying that, they're never going to, they never really appreciate that side of things. But the problem is because men who do that make a claim on the emotionalism that women have, that women want to sort of have a monopoly on. So you can go and do that, and as soon as you start saying, well, my fears about this, or I'm being emotionally vulnerable with you. As soon as you do that, women for the first 5 minutes might sit around and listen to you, but after that, men being emotionally available sounds like complaining. It sounds like you're not a real man because you're not toughing it out, buddy. You're not taking it on the chin. You're not being resilient like they believe a man should. So in one breath, it's, you need to be vulnerable. You need to be emotional. And the other breath, it's like, well, because you did exactly what I just said, then now you're less of a man for doing that. And so there's a monopoly on emotionalism that we afford to women, but we will never afford to men. And even men will go, we'll look at them and think there's something wrong with them.
I think that, this is sort of a generalization here, but women in general, I like to compare them to pressure cookers, and it will vary from woman to woman. Some will be more intense than others, but when things get overwhelming, they'll blow off some steam. They might yell, they might say some things, they'll have a good cry, then kiss, make up, you move on, right? But what my thing is, the stuff that they say, it's unbelievable. Some of the stuff that listeners have shared with me, husbands, things that have been said to them by their wives, where, I'll just give you a quick example. Calling the husband a fat slob. well, I know what the wife looks like, and she's in no position to be casting stones at this guy. Yet if he were to say that to her, it would be like game over, you know? But they expect you, it's like they feel they are entitled to say terrible things to you with impunity. There's not going to be any consequences.
Right, because you're a man and you should take it on the chin. That's why.
You gotta be,
and if you say the same, and if you say the same thing to me, or the equivalent of it, I have the entire world, the entire gynocentric world, the sisterhood right behind me will reinforce everything that I say because of that.
You hurt me.
It will. And then what you were saying before here is like, you have a fight, or horrible words are said to you, or you have some sort of, you know, mind games going on, or you have some kind of conflict with that person. And then, you know, half an hour later, the woman is over it and she's like sending you Father's Day cards. Right. And you're supposed to go, well, I just forgot. Well, remember, again, women can hold two different, you know, conflicting, you know, cognitive dissonance. They can hold two ideas in their head and be completely fine with either one of them, however they go. And so this is the expectation is that because you're a guy, and this is always because you're a guy, you're less emotional than a woman. And for the large part, that's true. But we keep telling men that they need to be more like women. And part of that being more alike is to condition themselves and create themselves in a woman's image, is to be more emotional, to be more vulnerable, to be wound collectors, to do all this kind of stuff. And so while they're saying that one thing, they're being, you know, hurtful and hateful to you. And then, of course, you're supposed to take it and you can't say anything back. But to add insult to injury is, if you don't accept her, if you don't forget about it in 5 minutes, then you're not a real man. But you've been taught that if you don't hold on to it and if you don't process emotions, then you're not a real man either, because you're not a female ideal, because they want you to be more emotional. So it's two conflicting ideas. There's the one where we want more emotional men, and there's the other one where men should be men and they should get over things quicker and take it on the chin. So what's it going to be? Now, the answer to this, and let's just add a little bit of positivity to this, is men need to be their own men. You need to first of all, you need to be red pill aware. You need to see all of this, what we've been talking about for the last hour here. You need to see this for what it is, see the mechanics of it, understand what's going to be on, and then use that as a tool to better your life. So that when that happens, when your wife, you know, tells you to, you know, go pound salt, whatever, you need to be stoic. You need to be the guy who's going to, you know, either decide that you're going to be involved in that, or you're going to remove yourself from that situation. You have the tools now. What you decide to do with those things, what you decide to do with that conflict that she's happy with, that she's okay with, but you're confused by, don't be confused by that, because women can hold those two differing ideas. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to say, you know, F off, I'm out of here? Or are you going to sit there and try to sort out the things that, you know, that are conflicts in your relationship?
This is, you know, today is not only being used to attack fathers, right, and the patriarchy, but also traditional models of masculinity. You have the Dove commercial where daddy's holding the little baby.
Oh man, I really want to get into this one. This is the one I wanted to talk about.
And now they're talking about, you know, we need to get behind paternity leave. Now, I've got 5 children. Paternity leave was never offered. Maternity leave for moms, yes, that's one thing. My one of my younger brothers, Paulie, sort of the black sheep of the family, his wife had twins, okay? And she's got a very nice job, and she got like 11 or 12 weeks of maternity leave, and he got 6 or 7 of paternity leave. And they're like, for what? What do you do? You didn't have the baby. You know, why do you get a 6-week vacation? It's, well, like, you know, because they're twins. You know, I'm going to help out around the house. But it's, and I'm not saying fathers can't nurture, but, you know, stay in your own lane. There are certain skills that women have and are much better at than guys. And when it comes to raising younger children, you know, especially infants, mom's the expert there. Yeah, you can change diapers, you can, you know, bottle feed a kid, but the person who is built to accommodate that, the person who knows how to do that almost intuitively, is the woman. And they're trying to make that, you see, this is more of the push. They want us to be more like women, like women.
Right.
You know?
This is
breastfeeding a gig that they had for guys.
This is, again, egalitarian equalism. This is blank slate reasoning in parenting, that because we believe that men and women are equals, and where a man's just as good as a woman to raise children, and a woman's just as good as a man in the corporate boardroom, whatever. This is a perpetuation of that. Is that if you look at the imagery that they associate with this, right. It's the man is now he's not nursing the child, but it's usually some shirtless guy with the baby like tucked in, next to him. Oh, it's so good, he's a great dad. He's parental. That is an image, that is a vision of parental investment for women. Doesn't mean he's like the sexiest guy in the world, but it means that this guy is pre-selected to be a father, or at least that's the imagery that we're supposed to get. Now, what they're implying in this idea of the parental leave kind of thing is that men need to be home to bond with the child. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that men don't need to bond, they do. But is that going to take place with or without a parental leave? I'm not saying guys shouldn't even have like 2 or 3 weeks off. Maybe they should. I don't know what that is. We're always going to think that, good example here, we're always going to think that a woman is going to need more time away from work to nurture and be a mother with that child, learning how to be a mother. I know, man, gosh, I remember when I had my daughter for the first time, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I'm like, I am totally unqualified for this. I don't know what I should do, but you got grandma and you've got, sisters and brothers and stuff like that will help you out. And so you end up, let me stop lying. I'm still making it up as I go along. But why is it that we expect a man to need less time to bond than a woman? If we're going to talk about equals, why is that? And the other thing is, I don't necessarily think that, guys have been bonding with children without parental leave for a very long time now. Sure. I think really all that is this idea that we need to, it's a reinforcement of the idea that men need to be more feminine. They need to be more like that whole argument I just made a little while ago, how we want to teach men to be more like women, that this is another affirmation of that. It's guys, you need to be the shirtless dude on the couch with your baby tucked in. And then that will, it's an exchange of roles. And just like you were saying before, yes, men and women are different. Men evolve for certain things, to have certain strengths and certain weaknesses. Women, the same thing. One of those strengths for women is usually, a maternal instinct. I'm not saying that there's not a paternal instinct, but that's different. A lot of guys, and I'm sure probably somebody in the chat's gonna mention this, so I'm just gonna throw it out there. Is like, there's this idea that women should be in charge of nurturing children up to a certain age, and then after that age, it's up to the father to teach like survival skills, or like how to throw a spear, or how to get along. There's certain unique conventionally masculine aspects that only a man can impart. And I definitely believe in that. Like I said, men and women are better together than we are apart. And this really, I talked about this in Positive Masculinity in the sections where I'm describing how to be a red pill parent, or what you can expect as a red pill father. There is this idea right now that if we're not trying to teach fathers that they need to be mothers, or they need to be more feminine, then we are teaching mothers that they don't need no dude. They don't need a guy. Men are superfluous. They're nice to have around, but they're not necessary to the future betterment of children, which is entirely 100% statistically provably false. And if you don't believe me, go and pick up this book. It's called The Boy Crisis by Dr. Warren Farrell, and it will open your eyes to a great deal of things.
But the reality is, things are set up now to replace the physical presence of the dad. There's a whole support system out there. Mm-hmm. Even if a lot of women who work, they really don't need the guys. Money-wise, they don't need the guys. Some of them are making a hell of a lot more than their husbands.
That's why there's a decline in marriage rates.
Absolutely. And if you're in a situation, even as a single mom, there's all sorts of support mechanisms set up for you all around to take the place, to supplement that, what dad would be doing, at least financially, as far as a provider.
Yeah. Look what we've done since in the post-sexual revolution. era is we've removed the stigma of single motherhood, entirely removed it away. In fact, we lift up and we praise women on Mother's Day for being that do it all superhero mom. And here's the thing that I was hitting at in the last point is that we teach women that they can do it all, that they're superheroes, that mom can do everything. And you get like single, sons of single mothers who are like, I never needed a dad. You're just the greatest thing in the world kind of thing. So you're always lifting it up. It's always this lifting up of the feminine, and it's this mashing down of the masculine. And in doing so, we teach women that because they don't need a man, that they are the equal of anything that a man could possibly teach, anything a father could possibly teach to a son. You can do that. You can do that just fine. And that some women will argue with me and they'll say, well, no, we don't do that. I need to have I look for, my brother or my or his grandfather or whoever. I'm always looking for a positively masculine influence. I'm like, yeah, but see, all that does is back up what I'm saying here. You can't do all of that, and you need to find that, but you're still taught that. The message to women today, the message to mothers today is that and this is like, you want to talk about solipsism and you want to talk about just the height of female hubris, is the idea that you can raise the next generation just as well by yourself than with a man in your life. And that right there and I put that sentence actually into the parenting part of positive masculinity. And I really felt that was something significant, because when I came to that, when I came to that realization, it's like, that's what we're telling women, that it's better for them to be the masculine model as well as the feminine model. It's better for them to do that, because we already teach women that they are autonomous things, that they don't need a man. They're independent. They're strong, independent women. And that independent part means they're independent of men. So there's this, we have to be, but they're going to be the life givers, right? They're going to be responsible for the next generation. And men can't be trusted. Men are buffoons. Men are aggressive assholes. Men are, fill in the negative blank. So what she has to do is say, well, I'm going to go and raise the next generation of beta guys. And I say this because I've been called to the carpet on this before. I say, why would a woman want to raise a beta male guy? And the reason is because she's looking at her son not as the lover archetype, not as the alpha male that she wants to breed with, but as the security provider, as the guy, the guy who, the alpha guy she couldn't lock down but still had his baby. He's unreliable, but I'm going to make his son, I'm going to turn his son into the best guy I think I can make him, which is he's got to be dependable. He's got to be emotional. He's got to be vulnerable. He's got to have all these, it's all of these really beta blue pill traits. Right. They're going to put, and that to the exception of everything else, right? That's why women will do that, because they're looking for a security they're looking for a security in their son that they couldn't find in the father. And so that's what she, well, I can start off and I can just create one, right? And then that gets into like edible complexes, and that gets into like possessiveness.
And you see this in sports all the time. You've got a lot of parents who they were never jack, when they were in school, high school or college, whatever, playing sports. But you know what? Their kid's going to be the superstar. That's what the mom is doing. That's what the mom's doing, because there is no dad there. She's going to turn that son into everything she wanted, everything she needed, everything she couldn't get from the biological dad.
Right.
They're living vicariously through.
Yeah, in a way, but okay, living vicariously, yes, but also creating what they believe is an ideal male, as an ideal man. Now, it's not to say that the guy's the kid is always going to be like some, little powder puff blue pill guy. I mean, hopefully he's inherited some of the traits of the alpha father who would never commit, or the asshole dad who's never around. What was it? There's this other lesbian couple, I think, in Brazil. There was a story about this, who had like cut off the penis of this 9-year-old boy and like just basically murdered this kid because the kid's face reminded the lesbian mother's of the face of the father, right? And so it's this angst. I'm not saying that this is a unique case, Grant.
Do me a favor. Give me 2 minutes. I got to grab something at the door. I'll be right back. Okay.
Sure. I will tell you this, and I wanted to get into this a little bit too today, so I'm gonna move on a little bit here while he's gone. one thing that I see, particularly in the Dove commercial, is that we are leaning more towards a social understanding of fathers as being whoever is there giving the care, whoever is the care provider, not the biological father, and that is by design. And I've talked about this in the War on. I have an essay called "The War on Paternity," and and yes, by the way, I am going to be posting a new post on rational male. I've got a lot on my plate right now. I'll tell you when I'm doing housekeeping later on, but I have an essay coming up that's going to explore a little bit more about men's paternity imperatives and how, as a society, we are sublimating those imperatives for the interests of women. Right now, because we live in a gynocentric society, the fathering, our ideas of fathers are whatever is convenient for a mother. So a woman's sexual strategy at this point is to breed with the alpha male and to find a suitable beta male to be the provider. It's cads versus dads in the biggest sense that you can find. So what I see happening right now is, and there was I think there was a story. Which one was it? Oh, was it this Budweiser? I think Budweiser did an advertisement about celebrating stepdads, or we don't want to call it Father's Day anymore. We want to call it Special Persons Day. So Mother's Day is okay, but we can't have a Father's Day. We have to erase fathers. And this goes back to what I talk about when I say we are removing the man from society, from a conversation.
Well, didn't somebody want to change Father's Day into Special
Persons Day? That's what they're trying to do. Yeah. Now, I don't know if that's ever going to take, but just the fact that they want to change something like that should tell you that that is another indication of what I call remove the man. We need to remove the man from the house, from the reproductive process. We need to remove the man from the conversation. We need to remove the word or the letters MAN from the English language. Literally want to do that. So it's this wholesale removal of the man while keeping the feminine, while keeping Mother's Day we can have. Father's Day changes into something else. What?
I just had a great idea. I had to do this on my local radio program just to see what kind of response I get. Okay, so you know how they used to have separate days for Lincoln's birthday and Washington's birthday, and they morphed it into President's Day? Mm-hmm. So I had to go on and say we ought to do away with Mother's Day and Father's Day and just put them together somewhere in between as Parents' Day. And who do you think would make the biggest stink? Mothers.
Oh, mothers, yeah.
They're not going to give up their day.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's why. And why is that? Because, again, women are solipsistic and they want that celebration. They want that recognition. Man, I will, and I think that this is, I feel pretty confident in saying this. So then this is just my allegorical, my anecdotal observation, is that fathers tend to not place a real big emphasis on Father's Day, whereas mothers go overboard on it. I know from my own experience, my mom does this all the time. She wants to be number one when it's Mother's Day, and then they barely remember that it's Father's Day. Now, I'm not saying that that's the way that is in my house. My wife remembers me on Father's Day. I get a card. Okay, great. Love it. And this year, I kind of wish I would have brought it in. It was really nice. She was complimenting me on being the man of the family. And I usually get one serious card and one kind of goof card. And the serious card was, you provide for this family. It was almost like this declaration of appreciation. And I want to say it's because I have been a red pill aware father. I've been a red pill aware husband. I've been a red pill aware, raiser of the next generation, I guess. People will always say this is that, well, if you're red pill, you're going to have a horrible marriage. Well, my wedding anniversary my 23rd wedding anniversary will be on July 20th. So I think I've done pretty well for myself when it comes to those things. Thank you very much. But I think that when we're talking about, whether or not women, what are we talking about? Women place more emphasis, I think, on Mother's Day than fathers do on Father's Day because of that inherent nature, because that need for the world to acknowledge them, whereas men would be just as, for Father's Day, and I know this too, I would be just as, and I'm going to do this right after this show, is I'm just going to go up to Spooner Lake here and I'm going to fish for tiger trout, and I'm going to do it all by myself. And I don't need a special dinner. I don't need like mimosas and a brunch. I don't need the kind of thing, flowers and all this other stuff. It's like, I would just rather, be able to, hey, it's not that I don't appreciate it. I do, but There you have it.
So what else do we have to hit on here? There was a couple of other things.
I don't know where are we at right now.
We have about 20 minutes left.
20 minutes. We can get to some of these supers. Sam Bada has been kind enough to archive them for me in the side here, actually, which is pretty nice. We can get to some of them. Yeah, we can get to the supers. Okay, let's do the supers. Supers, YOLO, 55, Norwegian Scooby Snacks says, hi, do you have a list of masculine traits which is just for men? And is it anything to do when women react? Is there anything to do when women react negatively to masculinity and leadership? As far as traits are concerned, I wrote quite a bit about this in Positive Masculinity. So if you want to go and look at, different aspects of what at least I think are conventional aspects of masculinity, you can find those in that book. When women, I like this part of it though. Is like, is there anything to do when women react negatively to masculinity? What do you think about that one?
When women react
negatively to masculinity and leadership?
Generally, from my life, they're not part of it anymore.
Yeah, I know, exactly. I mean, you can always remove yourself from that situation. But I think when women react negatively to conventionally masculine traits, it's usually because they think that it is a power grab, or it's an attention grab, I think.
Power.
The other thing, and another thing I'm writing about right now as well, is when a woman's predominant impression of you is of a more beta male aspect, when they don't see you as a leader, when they don't see you as alpha, you acting alpha is an offense to them. It's offensive to them for you to decide that you're going to change up you're going to be incongruent with what their mental impression of you is. So for when women react negatively to masculinity, it's usually because they see you as inauthentic. They think that you're playing an act. You're trying to be masculine. That's what everybody says about like pickup artistry. Well, you're just putting on an act. Well, yeah, but it's an act to get you from point A to point B. But why is that offensive? Well, it's offensive because you are mimicking and acting in such a way that you are trying to deceive them. So if you're more predominantly beta male and you act in an alpha male way, or if you show leadership, or if you show conventional masculinity when they thought of you as like a male feminist or something like that, that's offensive to them, because now the existential fear for women is to be tricked by a beta male into thinking that he's an alpha male, and then breeding with that kid and breeding with that guy and then having his children and being locked into a lifetime situation with a guy who deceived them. And that's why you have those that negative stuff there. So like a woman will be like, if Chris Hemsworth plays Thor, you're like, oh wow, he's Thor. They have that positive because he's acting masculine. He is masculine. He looks masculine. That's the congruency right there. But if you take you take a beta male guy who tries to act like Thor, that pisses them off. And that's where you get that negativity, because it seems to them that he's trying to trick them into thinking that he's actually Thor.
It's like that thing you were talking about a week or two ago, where women are talking about suing guys. Like if they hook up with somebody based on the idea that he's a doctor or he's an attorney, and he really is, he went to 2 years at a community college, that's fraud, deception.
Yes. And why is that? Why would that be something that women feel so strongly against that they would want to send a guy to jail for pretending he is an attorney and having sex with him under the pretenses that he is like doing his residency in the hospital or something like that? Right. Why is that a crime? It's not a crime for a woman to wear a push-up bra or to change her hair or to to get a boob job or whatever. That's not a crime. But they want to make it a crime for a guy to misrepresent himself and a woman to by fraud, I guess, have sex with that guy because she thought he was something else. That's a crime, but it's not a crime for the other. Why? Because we live in a gynocentric social order. That's why. Okay, the next one here is R. Malik. He says, I'm 22. Also, wife is also 22. Oh, dude. Comes from a great family, no red flags, cooks and cleans for me and all. I'm just not attracted to her anymore. She's amazing. What do I do?
Wow, man, at 22,
you're 22 years old. Here's what you do. Don't have kids with her. If you're not attracted to her, a lot of guys, you know, I don't know why did you marry her in the first place? You weren't attracted to her. Was she attractive before and then she didn't? That's a hard one. I'm getting a lot, you know, it's funny. It's like the last 2 weeks, with everything that's going on, I've had a lot, an increase of guys hitting me up for counseling and hitting me up for just quick hit email advice. If I haven't answered you yet, and Malik, I'm going to tell you to do the same thing. Email me and I will answer this offline. If I haven't answered you, don't think that I haven't seen it. I'm literally buried in like 50 to 100 of these things right now. So I'm going to have to set aside an entire day to answer these things at some point. So Malik, hit me up online or offline, I should say.
You know, he doesn't give us any reason as to why he's not attracted to her anymore. Is it you know, again, 22.
Yeah, I need a little bit more. I need a little bit more with that. There's another one here, and this was kind of interesting. So how does hypergamy apply to lesbian couples? That's another one from Malik. When you look at lesbian couples, there's a couple of things that there's lesbians who are sort of like lesbians for life, and then there are lesbians who are women who decided that they want to be sexually fluid, and usually that's later on in life because they have this disappointment of just disappointment of, you know, men in general or masculinity in general. I'm just getting all kinds of spam here, you guys. Sorry, I'm gonna delete this.
Well, it's like that one I sent you about the, you know, talking about first world problems. There were an article about bisexual women who are being preyed upon by heterosexual couples, you know, for a threesome. They call them unicorns, and they feel deceived because what's happening is they're going to some of these dating apps. They think they're hooking up with another woman when in fact it's a woman basically being used as a lure to get her to go with her and her husband to have sex in the threesome. They feel betrayed. It's like, you know, only in this world could that possibly come up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was just going to say is that when we're talking about homosexuals, okay, the masculine, feminine, the dominance versus submissiveness. There's always a dom and there's always a sub in most lesbian couples and in homosexual couples as well. There's still a human dynamic that is added to those things. So, you know, when you're looking at even gender fluid relationships, there's always going to be a dom and there's always going to be a sub. So how does hypergamy play into that? Well, usually one of those couples in a lesbian relationship plays the masculine part, and that masculine part, one of the reasons I think really women decide later on in life when they're like say in their 40s and they divorce their beta husband that they had kids with, and they decide that suddenly that they want to become lesbians, they still tend to look for guys who are for women for dominant, for lack of a better term, bull lesbians to fill that role, to fill that masculine role. So the idea of hypergamy, maybe it fits and maybe it doesn't, because in that sense, for lesbian couples, there's going to be a more feminine one, there's going to be a more masculine one. I think that hypergamy might play a role for the more feminine of that couple.
Are gay men hypergamy free?
Well, gay men aren't hypergamous as it is anyways. But I will say this is that when you free up women to have sex with other women, or you free up men to have sex with other men, they tend to default to whatever their sexual imperatives were. So that's why you see gay men become far more promiscuous, because there's no filter there anymore. They're not trying to get pushed past a hypergamous filtering process to get, you know, to convince a woman that he's worth having sex with. It's just those two guys who want to get off together. When it's a lesbian couple, and I could be wrong about this, and if any lesbian couples are watching this and you want to correct me, please do. But I would say that hypergamy is something that the more feminine of the couple would be interested in, whereas the more masculine one adopts the role of the masculine. And so that's that one has to, honestly, I think when lesbian couples come together, they're looking more for security. And that's one of the reasons I think that they don't get along quite so well. I think it's the highest incidence of domestic violence is between lesbian couples right now. So What
I'm
else?
just waiting for the email. What qualifies Rolo to be talking about lesbian relationships?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Stay in your lane. Stay in your lane.
Absolutely not. I'm just okay, I'm just doing I'm coming to these coming to these, you know, understandings by how I can apply those to. I've written about homosexuality on my blog before.
You know, the one here at the bottom says, hi. It says, women who say they sacrifice their job by being home with the kids, and then she wants money from her man for being home. What do you think about this?
I don't know. Sorry, say that again.
It says, women who say they sacrifice their job
There it is. Okay.
by being home with the kids, and she wants money from her man for being home. What do you think about
you want to be you want to be the you want so this is the this I see this all the time. Like a lot of feminists decide that they want to be paid as a domestic servant, or that they want to be compensated for being a mother. That they have the hardest job in the world, so because they're raising the next generation, right? We're the life givers, so we should have, you know, we should be paid for our labor. I've heard women saying that they should be paid for actually having the child, for actually going into labor and birthing the child, because it does violence to their bodies. And that's also used as a rationale for abortion, that they decided to abort the child because they didn't want to go through the violence that would have been done to their bodies by having the child. Now, I think this is just complete madness, but there's two things going on here, and I'm just going to be facetious about the first one here. Is like, well, if you are going to be, if that's the way you see your family, if you see it as a paid internship or whatever it is that you're doing, well, first of all, why are you having kids? There are lots of things that pay a whole lot better than because if your primary focus is on money, why would you have children? Well, if that was going to be your rationale for making more money and you want to have kids, there are, you know, I mean, women are in the workforce. 60% of women are in colleges right now. You could be doing a whole lot more with yourself for that. And if that's the case, then would a man be able to subcontract out sex from somebody else? Should prostitution be illegal for married couples then? And we're just going to get into this whole, you know, silly discussion as to whether or not whether or not that we should even be married at all. And that's really what that question is meant to the direction we're meant to be led in. That is that marriage is not worth it. Marriage is not something that either men or women need to entertain. And again, that's a message that is destructive to the family unit. So now I'm going to answer this a little bit more seriously. Is why I think probably the more serious side is why are you thinking about it in terms of commercialization in the first place? What is the source of your belief that you should be paid for something that women have been doing for 100,000 years right now?
I think part of the angle is, and if I'm hearing the question correctly, let's say you got a traditional stay-at-home mom. Okay, dad's out there working. All right. By the way, that's not the norm anymore. The woman wants money of her own to have to spend on stuff. That's the way that almost sounds to me.
Yeah. I think what it is it's just this idea that it's a complaint because women don't have, they believe that they're doing a job, and they are, if they're responsible parents or whatever, they're doing a job. But what it is well, and they regret the fact that they have to stay at home and they can't make any money. And again, it's really what it is. And I'm going to answer my own question here. Is really what it is it's that idea of the strong, independent woman. She should be independent of the man. Well, if she's independent of the man, but she's still taking care of his kids, now it's a service rendered. She is no longer a wife. She is no longer a mother. She is a paid employee at that point. And so the women who profess this kind of stuff believe that in this commercialization of the motherhood, the parenting process, that's what they deserve to be compensated for. Because why? Because there's a root belief that she should be independent of that man, and that she is doing this guy a favor by having his kids. If that's the case, you married the wrong dude. You married the guy. Well, and I've got some bad news for you, ladies. Your entire marriage is based on a transactional nature. It's, is he your husband or is he your employer? Let's clarify that, because there's taxes that get involved in this, and then there's, we got to do this. Can he farm out services?
We got to get to Rich Cooper's tweet. I completely forgot about it.
Okay.
Sex as a gift on Father's Day, or for any holiday. This floors me, first of all, because it devalues sex. It makes it nothing more than it's a gift. It's transactional, and you would never. Can you imagine a guy or a woman going to work after Mother's Day? So, what did your husband get you for Mother's Day? Oh, he had sex with me.
Yeah.
They
gave me an orgasm. Yeah.
He gave me 2 back to back. It's like you would never hear that, but it's a routine thing that, well, I didn't even have time to get you, a gift card, but here's what I got for you instead.
What was it, like steak and blowjobs day? What was that all about? Isn't that supposed to be after like Valentine's Day? It's the masculine equivalent of Valentine's Day is steak and blowjobs day. No, I mean, yeah, I mean, all that is just it's a transactional nature. It's men and guys who are in this beta mindset believe that they're lucky, like that's their it's cookie time for good boy. What's Father's Day? I get a blowjob, right? That because they have no. Okay, we're at the end of the show, so because they have this idea that sex is always transactional. Women buy into it too, of course, because they realize on some level of consciousness that they married a guy who maybe he's a good father, maybe he's a good beta, but he's not the guy that she wants to be having sex with. She's not the fun guy that she had sex with in the foam cannon party in Cancun when she was going to college. He's not that dude. And he's that guy, like any guy who thinks that he's lucky to get a blowjob or to get sex for Father's Day. If you show me that guy, I will show you a marriage that is based entirely on transactions. That he probably believes in chore play. He's one of these guys that said, well, I washed a bunch of dishes. Here's my gold star. Can I, what do I get for washing dishes? What do I get for? And so it's this constant, like that's the only way that they've ever experienced sex. It's never been.
Say when I say it devalues it.
Oh yeah,
it makes it nothing. It's whatever the currency is today, but it should be something much more.
Well, I mean, we can like flip the script here. That's what we're really doing, is flipping the script here. Is like no woman is ever going to say, yeah, my husband actually went down on me. It was great. Happy Mother's Day for me. No woman is going to do that. They want brunch. They want mimosas. They want that appreciation, because in that marriage, that is more rewarding to them than having sex with their husband. Having the impression that I'm glad we talked about this. Having that appreciation, feeling that dopamine hit, maybe even feeling that indignation from saying, my ex-husband is a bastard. All of that stuff is more intrinsically rewarding to a woman than having sex with the guy that she's professed her love for to be with till the day she dies. It's not like that's not a gift for her, because most women will do this too, because we're brought up to think that our social order, because it's gynocentric, it understands that women's only agency with men is the sex. So if that is something that they internalize, and that what that does is that makes sex a reward, that not only for a guy, but also for the woman. Like the woman says, okay, he's going to have sex if he does this. I'm going to have sex. I get it's this obligatory duty sex. We've talked about this in our Christian shows, right? How is duty sex rape? Well, if she didn't really want to have sex, but she had sex anyways, is that rape, or is that just duty sex? She's just doing it out of a sense of obligation. Feminists will change that, I'm sure, because it'll end up becoming enthusiastic sex will be the only kind of valid sex very soon here. Within the next decade, enthusiastic consent will be the only kind of consent. Mark my words. I mark this show. But the idea that sex is a reward, that sex is a behavioral reinforcer. The behavioral psychologist in me is going to come out now. It's operant conditioning is what it is women give the treat, give the reward. They press the lever, the rat presses the lever and the pellet comes out. That pellet is the sex. And the guy is the rat and he has to do something to make the reward come out. When women understand that and men understand that as well, they understand the nature. That's why men, most men don't even care. They don't care that it's transactional. They believe that that's the right way for it to be. They believe that it should always be transactional. Like everything that I do, it's all about burden of performance, right? The burden of performance is if I have a good job, if I look kind of good, if I laugh at her jokes, if I I meet all of the 436 bullet point checklist that she has for me, then I will get sex, because men, particularly beta men, are very deductive problem solvers. So you have, between beta men and their wives, there's always been a transactional nature. So that's when guys tell me they like, I was awakened while married, Rolo. How do I, what do I do now? I don't know if I want to leave her, if I want to stay with her. I really want to make things work. But like, now that I know, I've read your book, I want to change myself and I want to change my marriage and I'd like to get more sex from my wife. Usually what they'll do is they'll realize that for the 10, 12, 15 years of marriage that they've had, it's always been transactional. And so now they have to shift from a transactional nature to a validational nature. They have to become the guy that their wife wants to have sex with, that really has, is horny for, that really wants to get with. And then that becomes the next challenge for them after that. But yeah, I mean, Rich is right. Like, no woman is going to say, oh, it's a reward for me, because that should show you the difference between men and women. Men and women are different. It's a reward for a man. It's it's positive reinforcement for the woman.
All right, it's 5 o'clock. We got to wrap.
All right, man. Let's do a little bit of housekeeping here. This has been a really good show. I kind of knew it would. Father's Day is always controversial, and we want to say that it gives us an occasion to talk about, men's issues and things like that as well. I hope we have done it justice on this turn. I am going to be doing Red Pill and Religion later on this week. I'm planning for Wednesday. It's either going to be Conk, or I've got a Muslim guy that we're going to talk about marriage and women from an Islamic perspective. I'm working on that right now. I'm doing some scheduling and stuff. And like I said before, guys, if you sent me a request for counseling, if you sent me a request or you sent me an email and you want me to answer a question of some sorts, I'm happy to do that. But just understand, I'm like buried right now. I'm still with all the stuff that's gone on with the 21 convention and the Red Man Group and everything else. I'm dealing with that. I'm dealing with my mom right now, who I have to put into an assisted living place. So I'm doing that right now. And I'm in the middle of writing the 4th book. And so that is my primary purpose right now, but I think I'm probably going to end up taking a full day, or at least a half a day, and answering all of my emails that have come in over the last 2 weeks. So I will get to you. I have your email. Don't think that I don't have your email. I do. If you want to support the show, please hit the like button. Also, make sure that you also hit the alerts button there too. We do this every Sunday at 4:30 Eastern. I am also on Pat's terrestrial radio show, which is on Fridays at 9:05 Eastern AM.
Talk Radio 1170 KFAQ.
Yes, in Oklahoma. If you want a link for that, you can find that on the sidebar of the Rational Mail, my blog. And if you want to show your support for this show, there are links in the description here. If you want to make a financial, or you want to become part of Patreon or whatever, all those links are right there. If you do not want to be a financial supporter, the best way you can help us out is 2 ways. First of all is to copy the URL of this video and post it in whatever media is your favorite, Facebook, Twitter, or wherever. That helps us out a lot. Also, if you want to help us out or you want to help me out, you can go to Amazon and you can purchase one of my books, or you can simply just go and put a review, a good positive review, please, if that's what you feel. I'm always happy to have good reviews. I use those for advertising on Twitter, so please feel free to go ahead and do that. And I think that's about it. Do you have anything you wanted to run? That sounds good, man. Okay. Sounds good, guys. Thank you for a great Father's Day 2019.